So how do you deal with engorgement or even mastitis? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about some amazing tips and tricks.
Mommy, did you know?
So for those of you who don't know, my name is Rachel and I'm a lactation consultant. I'm an IBCLC. If you would like to see more amazing videos, feel free to subscribe, like, comment, whatever you want. I have a lot of amazing resources out there. So I get this question a lot, and it's how do you deal with engorgement? So if you have not felt it yet, engorgement pretty much feels like your breasts are hard rocks. It can be very debilitating and even depressing at times. I know with my first, I had it so bad, I actually had a medical oversupply due to actually a thyroid problem that I have. A lot of endocrine disorders can sometimes cause low milk supply or even an increased milk supply. So for me, it ended up increasing my milk supply and I had extreme engorgement. So what can we do to help that? For one, a lot of people who have an oversupply or engorgement, a lot of the times their kids can't really drain the breast completely during a feeding. Sometimes they might need an entire feeding just to focus on one breast, or sometimes even multiple feedings on the same breast. So sometimes you have to think to yourself, one, is my oversupply maybe also going to be associated with, let's say, a fore-milk imbalance? Because what ends up happening is if babies cannot drain the breast completely, they're only going to be getting the fore-milk and they're not going to be getting the hind milk. Fore-milk satisfies your thirst, hind milk satisfies your hunger, and that is the fatty milk that's towards the end of the feeding. As the breasts start to drain more, you're gonna see more hind milk. Now, what ends up happening with engorgement, or even when you have mastitis, is that your breasts are so full that sometimes your babies cannot get to the hind milk and they only really have that fore milk, which can cause gassy babies, explosive diarrhea, poops. You'll see green frothy stools from all of that lactose overload. So our number one step when we have engorgement is, one, we want to make sure that our baby is getting to that hind milk. So we might have to do something called block feeding, whereas when we're not really timing so much, like 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes here. Instead, what you can do is 1 or 2 complete feedings from one breast before going to the next one. So what does that mean for you? That can mean, all right, I'm gonna do an entire breast on this, I'm gonna do an entire session on this breast, then the next session I'm gonna do this breast. Some people have such extreme engorgement, they might even need to do 1 or 2 feedings from the same breast before even switching to the next one. So it really kind of depends on what your milk supply looks like. You might need to pump a few times depending on how your engorgement is. However, remember that engorgement is related to your stimulation. The more that you are stimulating the breast, the more milk you are going to end up producing. The more milk is drained, the more comes back and is produced. So you think to yourself, okay, if I am going to be pumping, you want to pump just enough for comfort, but not so much that you're going to be overstimulating yourself. A lot of people say, okay, I'm engorged, baby eats, and I'm still full, let me pump to get the rest out. What ends up happening is your breasts think that you have twins or that you have to have even more stimulation, more milk. So it's going to keep repeating that process. What you can do instead is maybe hand express a little bit to soften the breast, put the baby on. Then if you're still a little uncomfortable, you can hand express a little bit just for comfort. You also can use ice packs, you can use cold cabbage leaves. Sometimes you might even need to have massages where you're kind of draining the lymph fluid, because it's not just breast milk that is causing engorgement, but it can also be lymph fluid. So you have to think to yourself, all right, stimulation is related to milk supply. What is as little stimulation as we can do? So we might have to stimulate less, we might have to hand express for comfort, we might have to block feed to make sure that the baby's getting completely off of the breast. Now, for extreme cases, sometimes we might have to pump 1 or 2 a day just to kind of completely drain the breast. However, if you do that, make sure that you are not over pumping. So if you might need to pump like 10 to 15 minutes, but try not to over pump, because when you start over pumping, it's going to make your engorgement worse. This transition period, it takes a little bit of time, so it's going to be a little uncomfortable. So you might want to take anti-inflammatories, as long as you're not allergic to anything like Motrin. Sometimes Tylenol helps with the pain. You might need to also have like maybe some lymph fluid massages, ice packs, cold cabbage leaves, and those can really help as you're going through this process. So what are we doing? We're decreasing stimulation to the breast. We're trying to minimize the amount of pumping that we're doing. That way we're going to have more of the baby draining the breast. We want to check the latch also. See how is the baby latching on? Is the baby too shallow and maybe that's why the baby's not draining the breast? Maybe we want to check with lactation. You can also check with me. If you check my website, I do consultations as well, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. We do virtual consultations as well. A lot of insurance plans even cover the consultations at no cost. So you can also contact me by email, phone number. We can go through as much as you want about all of this. Now, so we're checking the latch. We're making sure, okay, is baby draining the breast effectively? Sucking on the nipple alone is kind of like sucking on a straw with a hole in it, where you try to get milk out, but it's not really going to be doing the trick. So we're making sure, one, baby's latched effectively, baby's draining the breast effectively. We're probably needing to block feed depending on how engorged you are, that maybe the baby might need to drain just one side before going to the next side and the next feeding. We are trying to minimize the amount of stimulation we're doing, trying to minimize the pumping, maybe hand expressing for comfort. We're also trying maybe to do a massage to kind of make it a little bit softer and easier. Maybe anti-inflammatories, Motrin, Tylenol, based, as needed. Now, another issue that some people have is latching the baby on when they are engorged, because another kind of complication of engorgement can also be a fast letdown. When you have a fast letdown, sometimes babies start choking as they're nursing. So if you notice that as the baby's nursing, that is a very high indicator that your letdown is probably a little fast. So what do you do for that? One is you can try to hand express before you put the baby on. Maybe hand express the first letdown or so, just to kind of slow it down. Maybe your breasts are also so full that the baby has a hard time latching on, or the areola is not compressible. Maybe it's not soft, maybe it's dense because it's so engorged. So you might need to hand express or even reverse pressure soften. When you hand express, make sure you're not just squeezing this way, but you're actually going back and together, back and together, back, together. Especially if you're doing reverse pressure softening, you want to have kind of reverse pressure softening on the areola to soften it up and allow the baby to latch on a lot better. So we're doing some reverse pressure softening, we're getting the baby to the breast, making the areola a lot more compressible. We are putting the baby to the breast. Now, let's say you're let down so fast. You hand express, you soften the areola, you hand express the first letdown, and it's still coming out so fast that your baby's choking. What are some things you can do? Now, one is you can try to lean back, so you can actually lay flat, almost like a 30-degree angle, like almost completely flat, where the baby's just on top of you. Usually by gravity, that will help so that the milk's not just free flowing, and then the baby is able to regulate a little bit better. You can try that. You can try scissor technique. Usually we want to do like more of a C technique, but sometimes if you do the scissor, that can help to kind of block it off a little bit. Also, same purpose of that is why if you have a low supply and you do the scissor method, sometimes it blocks off the milk ducts and it actually decreases the amount of milk that's flowing. So make sure that you're using those in the appropriate situations. You might need to also have like a towel next to you, and if the baby latches off, you might need to put the towel back on, because sometimes if your letdown is so fast, babies sometimes come off. So, but that's gonna be perfectly fine. So what you can do is, let's say you put the baby on, you're softening the areola, you're letting the baby onto the breast, you're allowing for nice wide open latch. Maybe we had to hand express the first feeding, we might need to lean back. We might need to use the scissor hold to kind of block off some of those ducts, and that can help. And we might even need to know, okay, hey, the baby's probably gonna latch off. If the baby latches off, at least I have a towel. But you don't wanna be forcing the baby on. Give the baby a little breather and then go on from there. If you find that baby's having a hard time keeping up with the flow, you also can contact me as well. There's so many different tips that I'm giving you, and I know it can be a lot of sometimes like, wow, there's a lot of information. but that's because also every family is different. So what works for one family might work different from another family. But I hope that this really helps to clear up some ways that you might be able to make your engorgement better. If you are going through engorgements, you are going through mastitis, please, please, please contact me. I'm sure we can come up with a good plan that will fit your schedule, your family. If you are engorged and you're having symptoms of mastitis, be sure to contact your OB as well. Symptoms of mastitis can be fever, if you're lethargic, maybe you even have like a rash on your breast, maybe a clogged milk duct that is not going away. All of those different things can be signs. I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day. Feel free to subscribe and tune in for all of my other amazing, amazing videos.
Mommy, did you know?